Please welcome the president of the Iowa Women's Foundation Board of Directors, Allison Ames Galstad.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Each year, the Iowa Women's Foundation hosts this luncheon to celebrate the work we've achieved together with all of you, and look forward to the work we'll be doing next year. The Iowa Women's Foundation is committed to improving the lives of Iowa's women and girls through economic self-sufficiency. We work to break down the barriers that are keeping women from being successful, because we believe that when women are successful, their families and ultimately their communities are successful. Last year, we talked about barriers. We talked about how 70% of female-headed households in Iowa are struggling financially, and how so many women and children lack safety and stability in their daily lives. This summer, in an effort to understand those barriers and how the foundation might positively impact the economic self-sufficiency of women and girls in Iowa, we launched our state tour, She Matters. We listen, and Iowa wins. We wanted to hear from people in each community about the challenges women and girls faced and the obstacles they were struggling to overcome. We started by working with 37 local partners in communities across the state to identify community leaders and recognized for their work with women and girls. We then convened meetings in 18 different communities and invited those leaders to discuss issues facing women and girls in their communities. Over 300 individuals participated in those 18 community meetings across the state. Together, we worked hard to identify the specific struggles keeping women from achieving stability and success, those real barriers faced by women and girls in our state. As it turns out, although each community has its own needs, there are particular struggles shared by women across Iowa. Time and again in the 18 communities we visited, participants identified 6 key barriers to success. The common barriers are employment, childcare, housing, education and training, transportation, and mentors. We heard about women who were forced to quit their jobs because they lacked reliable transportation to and from work. We heard about women who lived in their cars in order to afford childcare while they completed their education. We heard about women who worked 3 jobs to provide food and housing for their family and still had trouble making ends meet. We heard about women who lacked access to quality vocational training and lacked mentors and models to work with them. After identifying these common barriers faced by women in our state, the challenge before us is how do we replace these barriers with pathways? Today we'll talk about how IWF is helping women overcome these barriers and putting them on the path to success. We'll show you a video spotlighting 3 organizations, grantee partners doing amazing work for women and girls across our state. We also have some very special speakers who will share their stories of breaking down barriers and creating their own pathways to success. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to recognize several outstanding groups with us today. Our luncheon sponsors are listed in your program and on the screens in front, but please thank them for their supporting the 2016 Annual Luncheon. Our current Board of Directors and Advisory Council, they are truly devoted to improving the lives of Iowa women and girls. And if the Board of Directors and Advisory Council members would please stand. I'm going to ask everybody to hold their applause till the end of the list, but I want you to be able to see who these folks are. If you could just please stand for a moment so people can see the Advisory Council and the Board of Directors. Thank you. Okay. It's always hard to hold applause, isn't it? We really do thank them. We'd also like to thank the Luncheon Committee and its co-chairs, Ann Ricketts and Sarah Russert, if you're here, and Tom Rockland, our honorary chair. I know they're here. They put in a lot of hours to make this day possible. And I'd like to present our sponsor for today's luncheon, Southgate Companies, for their generosity and support. Thank you, Southgate, for stepping up. Really appreciate it. In the audience today, there are many girls and women who were honored in our third edition of Ovation, a tribute to Iowa women and girls. You have truly made an impact on the people in your life. Thank you for all you've done. So if you were in the third edition of Ovation, please stand up and be recognized. Thank you. Lots of you here. Copies of the Ovation book are available at your table. We hope these stories will inspire all of you to honor a special woman or girl in your life in next year's edition. And a very special thank you to all of the founders, the Leadership Circle donors, the Directors Circle. Please stand if you're here today. Without you, none of our work would be possible. Thank you. I know we have a lot of Leadership Circle and Directors Circle here today. Founders, too. Finally, our heartfelt thanks to the IWF Grant Review Committee and the community review panelists for your hard work and expertise. Please stand. You have chosen an incredible group of grantee partners this year. Partners who are doing very important work, breaking down barriers and helping women across Iowa along the pathway to success. And I also want to take time to remember Mary Gantz, who chaired the Grants Committee for several years. We lost her this year. We miss her dearly. And now, I'm proud to announce this year's grantee recipients. We're thrilled to award 18 grants and $108,000 in grant money. That's a new record for IWF. Yeah. Thank you to all of you here today who have been part of making this possible. We couldn't be more excited to partner with this group of amazing organizations. Each of our grantee partners is working to break down one or more of those key barriers faced by women in our state and help women and girls along that pathway to stability and success. In 2017, your contributions will connect underprivileged African American girls in Cedar Rapids with the community mentors. They'll offer support services and help pay for childcare to student mothers in Sioux City. They'll provide life skills classes to young women in Dubuque who have dropped out of high school and put them on the path to earning their diplomas. They'll create individually tailored plans to help survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault in Oskaloosa. And they'll provide evidence-based, medically accurate sex education to 35 school districts statewide. We're humbled to support the work of these exceptional organizations. So without further ado, here are the grantee partners your contributions will support in 2017. Boys and Girls Clubs of Cedar Valley for their Smart Girls program, enhancing girls' physical and emotional health. Cedar Valley Friends of the Family for their Safe Shelter and Housing Stability program. Christian Community Development for their House of Hope Case Management program. Crisis Intervention Services for their Survivors Economic Self-Sufficiency program. Dress for Success Quad Cities for their Job Retention Support and Networking for Low-Resource Women program. Embark for their Changing View on Daughters of Burma program. Eyes Open Iowa for their Working to Institutionalize Sex Education program. Florence Crittenton, Home of Sioux City, for their Step Up for Success program. Foundation for Dubuque Schools for their Reengage Dubuque Life Skills Seminar program. Girls on the Run of Eastern Iowa for their Heart and Soul program. Girl Scouts of Eastern Iowa for their Girl Scouts Outreach Initiative. Latina Leadership of Greater Des Moines for their Latina Leadership Initiative. Lutheran Services in Iowa for their Refugee Child Care Training Program. Mid-Iowa Community Action Incorporated for their Rural Impact Program. NISA African Family Services for their Friendship Sewing Cooperative. Planned Parenthood of the Heartland for their Prevention Education in Scott County program. Tanager Place for their Pink Project Mentorship Program. Women, Food, and Agriculture Network for their Harvesting Our Potential Training Women Farmers program. What a fantastic list. We are so excited about the work happening all around our state. We are honored to play a part in helping all these organizations as they create pathways for women and girls across Iowa. And we wouldn't be able to improve the lives of Iowa women and girls if it weren't for the generosity of so many of you here today.
The Iowa Women's Foundation works to improve the lives of Iowa's women and girls through economic self-sufficiency, because we believe when women are successful, their families will be successful, and ultimately our communities will be much better off. Grant making is the heart of what IWF is all about. That is where we have our greatest impact. We support programs that are providing those pathways to economic success for women and girls in our communities. Love Girls Magazine, the Lutheran Services of Iowa Refugee Care Center, and Fort Dodge Wheels to Work are all programs that are working to bring down a different barrier within their community.
I started Love Girls Magazine after my best friend was being bullied. Knowing how great of a person she was and not having other people see what I see in her was really hard for me, and I know it was even harder for her. I wanted to create a space not only for my best friend, but for all the girls in my community. It's there to build up girls, encourage them, give them a place where they can have a voice. Because we have such good mentors who are really here to help us along the way, it's all a learning experience. It's really empowering for girls to know that even at 15, I can write and edit, and I can produce a magazine that other people would like to read.
The Refugee Child Care Training Program started in 2012 in response to people's desire to have more options for child care that were language specific. In all these communities, childcare is such a central thing. So a lot of times it was happening before, but just people weren't making any money doing it. And so this has been a way to really formalize that.
I know there's a lot of families that didn't have any income before. They started working as a childcare provider. They can provide their children. It's not easy to be a childcare provider. There's a lot of rules and regulations that you have to follow. The community needs help because some of the providers don't understand English.
Childcare, transportation, English, those really basic things that we can kind of take for granted. Those are the really big roadblocks for some people. So just being able to chip away at one piece of that is just really empowering for those ladies as well.
3 years ago, Cynthia got real sick. She had this immune disorder condition that we have to travel to Mayo Clinic. And all of a sudden, one day, my car broke down on me and had no money to get me another car. So I was grateful when I heard about this program.
My whole life, I barely ever got sick. And then all of a sudden, I was like in the hospital all the time, and the car gave me the opportunity to get the proper health treatment I needed.
There's a lot of families just like us out there that probably can't afford a car. They'd be a blessing to other people without them knowing.
When the car is given away and it's driven away, then people sometimes forget. And then that's where our funding issues happen. But as long as we can make it happen, we'll continue. And 60 cars, I can't wait till we get to 100 cars. That's a lot of moms and it's a lot of kids.
The Iowa Women's Foundation is the state of Iowa's Women's Foundation, and it's for all women to help all women. And whether you can volunteer your time or whether you can give financial resources, anything we can do to give a hand up and help women become economically self-sufficient is what this organization is all about.
I love the Iowa Women's Foundation and what they stand for. I really believe in investing in other women's dreams and giving opportunities to people.
People don't want a handout, they want a helping hand. Just, help me get started. And that's the biggest difference.
We realize that when you help women in Davenport, you're also helping women in Sioux City and Fort Dodge and Sheraton and around the state. We need to help all women, and we need to do it in a collaborative way. And that's why it's going to take our businesses, our educational institutions, our donors, our supporters, our grantees to all come together and to work hard to create these pathways to economic success for women and girls in our communities.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jasmine Babers, the founder of Love Girls magazine. Jasmine is here to share a little more about her journey in starting a magazine for girls, by girls, and how Love Girls has helped other young women discover their path to success. Please give a warm welcome to Jasmine Babers.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you to the Iowa Women's Foundation for having me here today and for believing in and supporting Love Girls magazine. As you saw in the video, when I was 15, I founded Love Girls because of a friend. Back in high school, a dear friend was being bullied, and like so many who have faced bullying and harassment, she struggled, wondering if the things that were being said about her were true. She lacked the role models and mentors to help build her confidence and show how amazing, intelligent, and just wonderful she is. So I decided, well, I can sit back and watch this happen, or I can do something about it. And that's how Love Girls was born. I wanted to help show my friend that she was beautiful enough inside and out to be in a magazine. And I wanted to create a set of everyday role models for all young girls I knew who didn't see themselves reflected in the media. I wanted to help the girls and young women who were struggling to find a path and struggling to figure out who they were. My path has led me to all of you, and to tell my story and to tell the story of others. I am made of many different intersectionalities, although I let none of them define me. When I was first getting started, it was reiterated time and time again that I had two strikes against me. One, I was a woman, and the other one was that I was Black, and I decided to add a third one, I'm young. And the list could go on and on. I faced many obstacles that could have defined me. I'm a product of the foster care system. I'm dyslexic. I'm short. But none of these barriers were so big that they couldn't be broken without support. So I think it's so fitting that we're here today talking about helping break down barriers. And I think it's so fitting that we're talking about helping others along the path to success. Because in starting Love Girls, I was helping my friend down her own path to self-confidence and success, as others had helped me. And through this magazine, we've also given many other young women an outlet to discover their own talent, like writing, graphic design, sales, fashion, event planning, the ins and outs of publishing, logistics, the managing of staff, and basically realize that they could do absolutely anything. And of course, for a young woman seeing someone she knows or someone who looks like her on a magazine cover, that's a powerful message. These young women realize that they can become each other's role models and they can become each other's helping hand. The magazine, now expanded nationally, has quickly become an organization that helps many girls discover their talents, build their self-confidence, and in this really powerful way, it begins to build their self-esteem. and show what they're capable of. When we talk about helping others down the path to success, I think it's so important to talk about how, as women, we can play a huge role in each other's success and supporting each other. That we have the power to encourage and to break down barriers and to build each other up. The title of the magazine, Love, speaks to the strength and bond we create with other women as we help each other along these paths. It's about the love and support we offer up to each other as we search for our own paths to success. But it also stands for specific ways we can help other women and girls. We can lead the way, we can overcome barriers, we can value each other, and we can empower others. Lead, overcome, value, and empower. And for me, that's love. And that's why I'm so passionate about Iowa Women's Foundation's mission and about reinvesting what Iowa Women's Foundation has invested into our organization. It's all about encouraging others, about helping other women and girls along the pathway to success. And I'm so truly happy to be here today, sharing this mission with all of you. Thank you.
There's a little difference in our height.
Thank you, Jasmine, for sharing your compelling story with all of us today and helping us understand why it's so important to work together to create a path to success for Iowa's women and girls. If you want to learn more about Love Girls magazine, we have these flyers out front at the registration table. Please feel free to stop by and pick one up as you leave today. Now, please welcome to the stage a friend of our organization and a woman with an inspiring story of her own. Please give a warm welcome to entrepreneur, businesswoman, and wonderfully loyal and generous supporter of the Iowa Women's Foundation, Lois James.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you all for being here today. This is a year of transition for me. After 32 years in business, I'm headed into semi-retirement at the end of the year. As I prepare for this change, it's also been a time of reflection. Have you ever stopped, looked around, and said to yourself, how did I get here? I don't mean you're in a room and can't remember what you were going to get out of that room. That happens a lot. But I'm talking about those moments when you think with wonder, appreciation, and a whole lot of disbelief, did I ever imagine my life would look like this? For me, it happened just a couple of weeks ago. I was walking into the office and saying hello to my team. It was an ordinary, everyday moment, but suddenly it struck me, how did this happen? Years ago, I could never have imagined having a business that employed several people, including my son, Jeremy. Of course, I'd like to say there was a clear plan and path that I laid out some 30 years ago, but it wasn't quite like that, far from it, actually. In fact, without small interventions, without others helping me along this path, I would never have gotten to where I am today. I can remember years ago working for an architectural firm and thinking I needed to figure something out that didn't require so much travel. After thoughtful exploration, I decided I wanted to help people with their investments. It was a big move, a complete career change. At one point, I was getting cold feet and lamenting to a coworker that I was 35 years old and making such a big shift seemed terrifying. Her response was, well, will you be any more ready in 5 years? I knew the answer to that was no. So I had the push I needed to take the next step down the path and starting my own business. And that's the kind of encouragement I hope we can give to other women searching for their path to success. It's funny to think at the time, I doubt my colleague had any idea that she was instrumental in encouraging me onward towards something that has been so rewarding. and sometimes I feel that way about the Iowa Women's Foundation. We don't know exactly who the money is going to help or in what way, but we can be absolutely sure it will go to women and girls in need. And like the advice from my coworker, it could be just the right intervention at just the right point in time. It's funny to think that at the time, in a broader sense, supporting the Women's Foundation helps foster change that helps all women and girls in Iowa through a very special mix of research, advocacy, and education that we know to be so effective in creating pathways to success. So it's easy for me to answer the question, why does James Investment Group provide matching dollars to your contributions? For us, it embodies everything we believe in. First and foremost, it's important to give back. And that by helping improve women's economic self-sufficiency, we have an effective and powerful way to do this. Investing in women and girls is investing in Iowa, plain and simple. And it's something we feel so very fortunate to be able to do. And now we'll further show our colors as investors by repeating a phrase we use with clients all the time: don't leave a match on the table. When we say this, we're usually referring to taking full advantage of your employer match in a retirement plan. But the phrase works well as advice for all of you here today. Don't leave our match on the table. Take advantage of the opportunity to double your contribution and help Iowa's women and girls. I hope you'll each join in and spend every dime of our $10,000 match, knowing that your contribution will be doubled and providing even more opportunities and advocacies for women and girls. Thank you so much for your generosity.
Lois, thank you for sharing your story and your passionate support of our work and the mission that we do. We are so grateful for advocates and supporters like you, women who have achieved their own personal goals and success, women who have now looked back and asked themselves, how can I help other women along the path to success? Please help us create those pathways to success for women and girls across Iowa with the Iowa Women's Foundation. In your programs, you will find an envelope and a donation card. I was even so bold as to put a pen with your programs. Please pick up that pen, help us match Lois's gift, and help others along the path to success. I won't make them raise the lights and take 5 minutes while you fill out your checks. We'll move on with the program. Now, I'd like to invite Janie Braverman from Southgate Companies to the stage. Janie will introduce today's very special keynote speaker.
I'm not going to call Dawn a giraffe. I'm just going to think it. Thanks, Dawn, seriously, for all you do. I have to say, it's really a pleasure to see such a full house today. I've been coming to the luncheons for several years, and I think this is maybe by far the biggest crowd we've ever had. So let me just start by saying, well done. And also, what an honor to introduce today's guest speaker, Cokie Roberts. You know, we all talk about and think about, there are only a few degrees of separation, and I was thinking this morning, I've only got 1 degree of separation. I know her. But maybe it's 2 because she doesn't know me, but very, very happy to have her here. Cokie Roberts is a political commentator for NPR and ABC News. Those of you who are driving to work at the same time I was this morning probably heard her this morning on NPR. She has over 40 years, She has over 40 years in broadcasting and has won 3 Emmys and is in the Broadcasting and Cable Hall of Fame. The American Women in Radio and Television named her as one of the 50 greatest women in the history of broadcasting. She's the author of multiple nonfiction books, many of them bestsellers, and writes a syndicated column with her husband, Steve Roberts. She holds more than 25 honorary degrees, and in 2009 was named a living legend by the Library of Congress. Her books include We Are Our Mother's Daughters, which is a collection of essays and profiles, From This Day Forward, which she wrote with her husband, Steve Roberts. It's a book about marriage, both their marriage and marriage in America. Founding Mothers, The Women Who Raised Our Nation, which has also been made into a picture book for children. Ladies of Liberty, The Women Who Shaped Our Nation, again, also a picture book. And she co-authored Our Haggadah, Uniting Traditions for Interfaith Families, again with her husband, Steve Roberts. Her most recent book is Capital Dames, The Civil War and the Women of Washington, 1848 to 1868. Somebody hold up a copy. They're around on the tables. There you go, out in the audience. Capital Dames is an account of Civil War Washington's secret power brokers, women, in a time when women had to be covertly ambitious. In an NPR interview with Steve Inskeep, Cokie Roberts said, "It's really remarkable how much we do the same things, century in, century out. You recognize their concern about their children. You recognize their interest in fashion. You recognize the jewelry that they're wearing. You also recognize their intelligence and their political sensibility." Capital Dames is not yet available as a picture book for children. It is, however, available for sale, I think, out in the lobby following our last speaker, so you can pick up copies today. So I want to say again to all of you, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And please join me in giving a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, political commentator, broadcast journalist, writer, thoughtful and articulate champion of women, Cokie Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you. So Jamie, you shouldn't feel bad. When Queen Elizabeth came to the White House at one point, they didn't have a little box for her to stand on, and all you could see was her hat. And she later actually commented on the hat speaking. So I know you have brought all of your female employees here today, and I think that's wonderful. So thank you very much for celebrating those women. I must say it's a treat to be in Iowa in a month not January. Although I warn you, both Mike Pence and Tim Kaine are in the state today, so you might hide. I actually was at a wonderful event on Friday with Laura Bush and Michelle Obama, and I've had the great joy thrice of interviewing the two of them together. And, you know, you sit in this crazy, horrible, poisonous political world, and then you're with the two of them, and they're getting everything done together. In this particular case, they were working on programs and for military families and vets. And, you know, they just sit down together and get it done. And you sit there and say, oh, God, why can't the men do this? But there it is. But of course, getting it done is what the Women's Foundation is all about, and has been since a group of women sat down for ladies' lunch a little more than 20 years ago. I know some of your founders are here, and what a fabulous job you have done and inheritance you have left. Because what they did was they did create this foundation and set about making life better for Iowa's 1.5 million women and girls. And the first way that they did that, and that the foundation continues to do that, is through research. And I can't tell you how important that is. Now, obviously, I have a bias for research. I'm a reporter. And I do write history books, so, you know, I believe in research. But the truth is, without the facts, you can't create the programs or recognize the programs that already exist that will do the most good, because you need to know what needs to be addressed. And so starting right away in 2002, the foundation did the first Status of Women report in Iowa. Absolutely essential to know what's going on in the state. And then has continued to do that, working with the Iowa Women's Leadership Project, She Matters, on the status of women and girls, and putting an online mapping tool, which is also just brilliant, because again, it shows you where the needs are and what you can do most efficaciously to deal with them, and to recognize. For instance, you heard from Allison earlier today that 70% of female-headed households have economic insecurity, 40% in poverty, 30% close to poverty. And so you don't know that unless you've done the research to establish it. And then once you do that, you can create or support the programs that can address it. The programs like we saw in that very effective video, and programs like Love Magazine, and Is Jasmine Fabulous or What? Yes. I said to her, you know, most of us think, well, that would be a good idea, and hope somebody else will do it. But she has done it as a very young, short, black female, and now we have to make sure that it continues, you know, after she's a less young, black, short female. But so the programs are incredibly important, and they're so practical. I mean, weren't you looking at that video and seeing cars to get people to where they need to go? How obvious is that, right? But who else is doing it? Nobody. So it is, you know, such a recognition of the need and then trying to fulfill it. Child care providers, business development, again, something that is absolutely, you know, just sort of plain as the nose on your face, but somebody has to do it. And then once the programs are created, advocacy for them. And I'm going to come back to advocacy later. So what's going on here is a very important set of priorities, and I know you all know that. That's why you're here, 900 strong. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to say that. I think it's a fire problem. But the fact is, you know, it is important. You know, completely unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to each other, my daughter and daughter-in-law each moved to new cities in their young motherhoods, and now they're not so young motherhoods, and they each got very involved with the Women's Foundation in their own cities, because they understood that this was the place where they could really make a difference and get things done. But I want to talk to you, though, about the fact that it's not just wonderful here and you know it, but a little bit about how it's part of an national and international movement that has come to be recognized as really the most important thing you can do in a country, is to support women and girls. And there's now become something of a saying: if you keep a girl in school, you save a country. And I had the experience a few years ago. I do a huge amount of work with Save the Children. And I was in Kashmir. This particular time I was in the Indian side of Kashmir. And we were in some tiny village in the middle of nowhere. And Save the Children had a program where girls were learning to sew, and Kashmir had outlawed plastic bags long before we did. And so the girls were sewing bags to take to market. and getting compensated for it. And they were sewing other things as well, and we were helping provide sewing machines and that kind of thing. And so there was a village meeting, and of course it's all men, and they're all sitting there on the floor, and you know, I'm from Mars, basically, right? And I mean, really, I try to be somewhat less green and horned, but still, I'm from Mars in these situations. And the men are talking about the problems in the community and all of that, and problems with jobs and et cetera. And finally, the oldest man, who's clearly the most revered and the elder of the town, says, "I'm going to speak," and everybody's quiet. And he said, "What's happening with these girls is the most important thing we can do, because that's where development will come from, is these girls learning how to support themselves and getting an education as they do it. And that's how we go into the future." I was gobsmacked, and so were the men, you can be sure. But it was true, and it's something that is now really quite accepted in the international community. When George W. Bush was president, it was his message every time he met with the G8 or the G20 or whichever G was meeting. He would always push on girls' education and how important it was. And then Mrs. Clinton took it up as Secretary of State, and the Clinton Foundation started something called No Ceilings for Girls, and now Mrs. Obama has also convinced her husband. It's so great to have a husband you can just say, "Do this," to do something called Let Girls Learn, which is now a United States government initiative. So it is trying to address the fact that 62 million girls around the world are not in school, half of them adolescents. And so it is a combination of a State Department, USAID, Peace Corps, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, and PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Program for AIDS relief, all together working to try to keep girls in school around the world. And the reason there is so much emphasis on this is because really now we've done the research, we have the data, that it is just incontrovertible that if you keep a girl in school, you can save a country. If you look at the 1950s, at South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia, they looked then a great deal like sub-Saharan Africa looks today in terms of infant mortality, life expectancy, per capita income, all of the things that you measure, literacy, all of those things. And by the 1990s, those countries had become what we called the Asian tigers. And by the end of the 1990s, a study by the Asian Development and World Banks, 2 studies, showed that these countries were buying in American goods and services more annually than all of their aid money that had come from the United States combined over the decades. So they had grown up into countries that were our partners rather than our supplicants. And what had happened? Well, what had happened was girls' education, according to these studies. Because what happens if a girl stays in school, she postpones marriage, she delays childbirth, she has a lower fertility rate, which leads to higher per capita income. You have an increased ability for women to earn and an increase for self-support. She then demands better health care for herself and her family, and then the country will have lower maternal and infant mortality rates. It's also true that these studies have learned that if a woman makes money, having stayed in school and gotten into some sort of self-sufficient occupation, that she then uses the money for her family and for educational purposes. She does not throw a party. She does not go to the bar. She actually reinvests the money into her family and into the community. And here's the surprise. The increase in female secondary school enrollment also leads to a more stable and less corrupt government, which really did surprise me. And it turns out to be, at some point, if women are more involved, they get more demanding of their government and insist on some transparency. And what that then does is remove one of the great barriers to development, because nobody wants to invest in a crook's pocket. But if you have a rule of law and a transparent government, then the opportunity for development is much higher. So all of the same lessons are true here in this country. You have to keep a girl in school or get women back in school in order for the country to develop. And it's one of the reasons, again, why the education programs that the Women's Foundation, the Iowa Women's Foundation supports are so important. Programs like Eureka, which is a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math program aimed at 12 to 18-year-old girls. The Luna program for peer education in the Latina community, or the University of Northern Iowa outreach to African American girls. All those are just some examples. I mean, all of these educational programs are incredibly important along with the other ones. And then advocacy for everything that's going on that the Women's Foundation is involved in. It becomes the next piece. So it's first research, then the programs, and then the advocacy, because none of it works without the rest of it. And Congressman Loebsack was just here, and he could tell you that advocacy really does work. And I see it all the time on Capitol Hill. My favorite example of it is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Everybody thinks that that the only way you get anything done is to be a big donor, and that's just not true. Those women didn't have any money. They had a story to tell that was an awful story, and they got a lot of attention for it because it was an awful story and was one we could all recognize. And in the space of very few months, they convinced the Congress to make it so that you could not get federal highway funds unless you raised the drinking age to 21. Now, you could agree or disagree with that policy, but the advocacy is what made it happen. And I see it over and over and over again on all kinds of issues. So having this room full of very powerful voices advocate for these programs also makes just an enormous difference. There are so many reasons, therefore, to feel good about all of these things that are happening today. I mean, not only are you spending time with terrific women and a few good men, but and know that you're doing great work in this community and in this state, but also it's, as I said before, not only is it part of an international movement, but also a national movement. And that is something that I've just been really heartened to learn about over the last few years. There are now women's giving circles in more than 400 cities in the country, maybe more. It's actually hard to get that data because not everybody signs up with some national organization. But at the White House Summit on Women and Girls, Prosperity Together was announced, and your Iowa Women's Foundation is part of that. And it's a commitment, a 5-year commitment, to raise $100 million for girls and women around the country in job training, childcare, and research. So it is everybody coming together to pool their resources to make it work. And that's what this, again, is all about. You know, women have always given of their time and talent. But for a long time, it was very difficult to get them to give of their treasure. And part of the reason for it was that we didn't think it was our own money. You know, we thought it was sort of the family's money. And even when it was our own money, we kind of felt like we shouldn't be giving it to something we were interested in. Well, that started changing. First of all, women have now more of the country's wealth. You know, the men just don't live. And so it is, it's a problem. I like them, you know, but my husband and I just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary. I'd like him to stick around, but, right. And you can imagine in 1966 when this nice Catholic girl married that nice Jewish boy, how many people thought it wouldn't last. But starting in 2005, we started giving more money than men. That was we can measure it again. That was the day. And in that year, the men of America gave a combined $16.8 billion in philanthropy, and the women $21.7 billion. And that is continuing on. So that's already 11 years ago now. And not only do we now give more, we give differently. As I say, we're much more likely to pool our resources so that they can be more efficacious. We're not interested in our names in stone above some building door, you know. I mean, one of my favorite stories about this was in my hometown of New Orleans, where in a museum there's, you know, literally etched in stone, a man and his first wife's name. And, you know, it makes the trophy wife crazy. Which of course makes me happy, but that's really not what we're after. We're after things that work, and so if that works better when we all get together with our money and our time and our talents, then we'll get together, and the foundation's name is on it, not our own names. We don't even really care about tax deductions. There's been a good deal of research on that. In fact, one of the women who is an expert on women's philanthropy, Pamela Fiore, told U.S. News magazine, women are looking for relevance, not tax deductions. They want to serve in some way. They feel it's their obligation and responsibility. And that's been true from the beginning. Jamie was kind enough to mention my history books. And one of the things that I learned in writing those books is that women very, very early in the history of our republic understood that, yes, the country was exciting. It was great. In fact, it didn't need to be made great again. It was a great country, and it's always been a great country, but they understood that it was a country that sometimes did not protect all of its citizens. And so even as we were moving west and excitement was just throughout the land of this burgeoning sense of possibility, there were people who were falling through the cracks. And women without any political rights, without any legal rights, married women couldn't even own property, but without the kinds of clout that we have today, still created the social safety net. They created the orphanages and the fuel societies and the poorhouses and the Sunday schools and all of the things to help protect and promote the most vulnerable among us. And in that way, they understood the idea in the Constitution of trying to form a more perfect union as they went about creating the institutions that would make that happen, and to make it a better country, a country that would retain its greatness into the generations. And that's what you're doing here today. It's exactly what you're doing. You're helping to perfect this union, and it is wonderful work, and I salute you for it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Whoa. An amazing woman with an important message for all of us. Thank you, Cokie, for being with us today, for your inspiring words, and thank you for your thoughts about how women throughout history have forged their own pathways to success and how we must continue to help women and girls do the same today. Many thanks to each of you for being here to share this very special celebration with us. It is truly because of all of you that we are able to do the work that we do. The Iowa Women's Foundation is committed to our ambitious but very important goal to improve the lives of all of Iowa's women and girls. It is a simple mission and one we are very passionate about. But as Allison touched on earlier, this simple mission is not always easy. For many women and girls in Iowa, they are still struggling and things are very hard. They are trying to find success. In our journeys across the state in the last couple of summers, we heard from women who were struggling and from the organizations on the ground helping these women and girls as they search for stability, safety, and ultimately success. Through our conversations and targeted research, as Cokie shared with you, we've acquired the data we need to know exactly how to help Iowa's women and girls. We have the numbers, we have the facts, we know the specific barriers that women and girls are facing, and we know what we need to do to create paths to success for each and every one of them across Iowa. We are honored to be partnering with the organizations we've talked about today, organizations that are helping us carry out our very important work. But of course, we can't create these paths to success alone. As Jasmine, Lois, and Cokie showed us, communities must come together and support each other in order to break down the barriers and pave the ways for women and girls to achieve success. I also want to take just a minute to say, we also want to thank the men in the room. I had a good time today. I got to go around and visit some of the tables. Alan Swanson, Mike Huber, Tom Rockland, David Rust, Jeremy James. Thank you for putting together tables of all men, and thank you for being with us and being men who get it and know the importance of investing in us. So today, we ask you to join with us as we work together, creating pathways to success for Iowa's women and girls. Can we give one final round of applause to our speakers for their inspiring words and their stories today? A very heartfelt thank you to Southgate Companies and Lois James and Jeremy for donating, and all of those of you who have donated and plan to donate to us. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Please leave your envelopes with the girls that'll be in the back of the room with their baskets. And thank you so much for joining us. Please drive safely and have a good afternoon.